Hello and welcome to Our Time.
Great to have your company once again.
But welcome if you haven't seen our program before. This is Malcolm and I'm Janice.
And this program goes all over Australia and you can watch it more than once a week wherever it plays.
Absolutely.
So check out your local program guide if you can find one, or you can check us out on Facebook on Our Time TV, and that will give you who's on the program even.
And Ken's on the program.
He is, with a very special guest. Ken, it's all yours.
All yours.
Well, talking to my first guest, I realised that some people have a very, very, very busy life, and this man is no exception. Michael O'Connell. We've spoken to Michael before. He's the Commissioner for Victims' Rights. When do you sleep?
Well, unfortunately, not very often.
I figured that.
From a personal point of view, that is.
Yeah, Michael, you are ridiculously busy.
Well, the important thing is that I'm employed to give a voice to victims of crime, whether that be here in South Australia, whether it be outside of our state, even internationally. And I think it's important because victims want a voice, they want to say. They don't necessarily want a right to veto every decision, but they want to be there and they want to be acknowledged.
Have we come a long way, the mere fact that we need somebody like you to be a voice for victims? Is that a sad indictment?
Well, the position I occupy as Commissioner for Victims' Rights can be likened to a crime victim ombudsman, but many of my functions are far broader. For example, I can appear in certain criminal proceedings, which is unique to South Australia. In fact, the total of the job that I do is the only one of its type anywhere in the world. And South Australia should be proud of that. It's a remarkable achievement.
Why have the other states not followed our lead?
Well, in more recent times, states have followed. So New South Wales has a Commissioner for Victims' Rights. They have a Commissioner for Victims of Crime in the Australian Capital Territory and Victoria, and likewise West Australia. But South Australia is the only place that has created a completely independent statutory officer appointed by the Governor. Only the Governor can sack me, and allowed me, in terms of loosening the reins, to be able to step outside of our state, argue on a national platform for improvements, and even travel overseas to argue that our citizens, if they become victims in other places, should be treated with respect and dignity.
Hope you get on well with the Governor.
Well, I've managed to outlast two governments, a Liberal one and also a Labor one, and also 2 or 3 governors.
How do you get involved? Who approaches you, or who recommends that these people, these victims, need help or need your assistance?
Well, most often victims who feel aggrieved by the system come to speak to me, and that's where my ombudsman type function comes into play. So I can consult public officials on the way they treat victims of crime, and in terms of enforcement, I can recommend that the public official, if they have treated the victim inappropriately, make an apology. That element is quite unique to South Australia. It means that we're one of the few places that has what some lawyers call enforceable victims' rights.
So you can enforce, you have quite a bit of power on behalf of the victims, the aggrieved party?
Well, certainly by way of an apology.
Sure.
Many of the things that happen to victims cannot be undone. For example, in our state, a victim can make a victim impact statement. That's part of our international responsibility, and if that is not done during the sentencing process, then you cannot unwind the sentencing process. You actually have to admit that a mistake has been made and offer a victim an apology, and one hopes that it's a genuine apology.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Do you know? How do you know if it is a genuine apology, or they're just giving voice? So,
yes.
Well,
I think that's difficult. I've had some really quite interesting apologies. I've had a very senior police person admit that they had erred one of their staff, and rather than send the staff member out, he felt that it was so important that he arranged for a social worker to accompany him to the victim's house, sat down face to face and said, look, you weren't treated with the appropriate respect and dignity. We didn't give you the information we should have done, and I apologise. And then I've had on another occasion someone write a letter to the victim that said, as a result of a determination to apologise, please accept this letter. And it had no real apology in it at all. So victims often will accept a genuine apology. They realise that human beings make mistakes, and none of us are perfect.
So who are the perpetrators generally? Are we talking police officers, private citizens, government departments?
Well, I don't deal with perpetrators as in the actual offenders, other than I can represent victims' interests. For example, in a criminal proceeding, it may be that I go down and make the victim impact statement or something similar, but most often I'm inquiring into public officials and the way that they treat victims of crime. At the moment, that authority is limited to South Australia, but because our victims or our citizens travel overseas, I sometimes find myself involved in other matters. So I've been to Denmark, for example, to follow up on a complaint against the Danish police.
Yeah. Were you taken seriously in Denmark?
Well, they arranged for a senior police person to actually go and visit the victim and the victim's family. It was a murder that had happened in that country, and the police reported afterwards that it was the first time that they had ever gone to a victim's home for that type of follow-up. And the sergeant involved in the case gave an undertaking that it would be the practice for his investigation team from now on. Whereas here in South Australia it's commonplace, but they just didn't comprehend that that was something so important to victims' families in those most tragic cases where people are killed.
Michael, obviously you've been doing it for some time because you've outlived a few governments. You must have seen some enormous changes.
Yes, and those changes have not just been here, but they've also been nationally. We have a national framework now on victims' rights, and internationally, if we go back as far as 1985, the United Nations endorsed the first Declaration on Victims' Rights, and that's been influential in other declarations and covenants and treaties, as well as was instrumental in the creation of the International Criminal Court. And Australia has played a lead role in many of the development of much of those documents and the court itself.
And speaking, of course, of the United Nations, you were there last year, you're going there again, and you've been there quite a few times to various countries. What's that necessarily about, and who are these people?
Well, this is actually a picture of myself with the chair of the United Nations Liaison Committee and the president of the World Society of Victimology. The World Society is an advocacy organisation made up of scholars and others, and we attend the United Nations for the purpose of trying to influence the development of international law. We believe that victims of crime, no matter in which country they are, should be treated with respect, with dignity, and have the same fundamental entitlements. And there are, in international law, there are 10 basic rights that all victims should have. And so one of the functions I perform as the Secretary-General of the World Society of Victimology is to constantly remind government delegates, other non-government organisations and other institutions that victims count, that their perspective, their point of view is important, and if we are to have a just, fair and equitable criminal justice system, no matter where it is in the world, then we need to ensure that the victim has a voice.
And quite clearly, you would have seen an amazing, I would imagine, an amazing transformation with these victims after they were treated seriously and decently.
Well, the change is quite remarkable for some people. It would be wrong to say that they have closure as a result of their experience in a criminal justice system, no matter where that is in the world. But what is important is that we know from the research that's been done by organisations such as the World Society of Victimology that victims who are given a voice, who feel that they were listened to, even if the outcome isn't exactly what they want, are more accepting, are more likely to develop skills to help them cope with the situation. But if they're shunned, if they're pushed to one side, if they're relegated to be nothing more than a witness, then that frustration boils over into anger, and it just adds to the grief that they feel as a result of becoming a victim.
Gee, it's an important role you've got. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but you're off to the United Nations again, an interesting part of the world, Qatar.
Yes, well, hopefully it's not going to be too hot.
Yeah, it will be.
But I'm hoping, we're going there because it's the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration on Victims' Rights, and so the World Society of Victimology has been asked to join the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime in holding a high-level event to celebrate or mark that. I've also been asked to talk about police and their responses to victims of crime.
And you were a former police officer too?
Certainly
in another life.
Police officer, but despite that, South Australia actually has some very commendable police initiatives in terms of keeping victims informed, help upholding their rights, and we provide a good model that people want to hear about. So I've been asked to talk about that as well.
Michael, thank you for popping in. We're very pleased that you have, and you've explained it so succinctly, and all the best for when you're overseas, and take some some bathers. I presume there's water there.
Well, I would hope so, and thank you very much for the invitation, and I really hope that many of your listeners never need to call on an office like mine, but I think it's important that they know that there is a place they can come to if they need it.
Good on you, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael O'Connell, the Commissioner for Victims' Rights.
And here we are again.
And welcome back to Our Time with a special friend.
And he is a special friend. He's been on our program a couple of times now. Welcome back, Blake Bauer, to our program.
Thank you, Janice.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you too.
And me? Oh, thank you.
Of course.
I was
he's
going to
just
drop
talking to me.
Well, I was going to drop into sadness
Who are
there.
you? Yes.
Now, Blake, we talked before that you are a best-selling author, and your book is called...
You were not born to suffer.
Oh, no, I don't think I was either. In fact,
We're not, any of us.
We're not. But why did you write the book in the first place?
Firstly, because of my own suffering, and then after a very long...
Can you just quickly recap on that for someone who came in late?
Yes. Well, I grew up in a family where there was a lot of addiction and drama, like a lot of our families. And when I was 14, I got heavily involved in drugs and alcohol, to the point where I was selling drugs and arrested often. I was also the captain of my Year 12 varsity football team with offers to play football at the next level. And one night I got a DUI coming home from my girlfriend's house. I put my car in park at a train in front of a freight train in the middle of the night, and I fell asleep with drugs in the car, drugs in my system. I had been drinking, smoking pot, popping pills. So I was arrested, kicked off the football team, and so at the age of 18, I basically pushed away everyone and everything that I cared about. And that was also my identity, or who I thought I was, so that crumbled, and I found myself very insecure and lost and confused. And then that set in motion my healing and spiritual journey.
But how? How did that? I mean, how did you actually then suddenly decide to go from such a life to change so dramatically?
Pain, a lot of pain. Just the hurt in my heart from losing football, from losing my girlfriend, from losing, it was the lifestyle of, you know, the life I had at that time.
Yeah.
And you know, I felt very alone and very confused. And because I had a number of family members who had destroyed themselves, their lives, and their families because of drugs and addiction, I saw what not to do from them, but then I had followed suit and done the same thing myself. So I realized I couldn't live that way anymore. But
thank you for being so honest about that, because I guess everyone's touched with this in some way in today's society. People watching this program may well have a younger family member who's going through a similar time, and I think it's very valuable to know that you can come out the other end positively.
yes, absolutely.
And you came out very positively.
Yes, yeah, I hope so. So thank you for saying so.
No, but you did because of what you now do, because
Yeah.
you're helping people who have issues, whatever they may be, and they are coming along to the seminars that you're doing, and through, is consultation the right word to use?
Yes, I have a counseling practice, and I also coach people, and I've studied various forms of alternative medicine. So on that journey, I ended up going to 5 different universities, and I did quite a few professional trainings and studied with very special doctors and healers. So yes, I address the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, money, relationships, everything basically that as human beings we struggle with.
Is there a common trend with people feeling down about themselves at the moment?
Well, I believe that all of our suffering, and that's the premise of my book, comes back to us never learning how to love ourselves and what that means practically on a daily basis, as we were talking about before, and we've talked about, I think, on the last time I was here. We grew up learning that loving ourselves is selfish and negative and wrong and a sin, but then we end up with a very empty cup, and we're bitter and resentful and manipulative and angry. So,
Well, I think you made a very valid point. If you don't love yourself, who else could?
right. And you can't love anybody else if you don't love yourself.
You've got nothing to offer.
Right, you got to keep that cup full. So that underlying current for everybody is not knowing how to love yourself, accept yourself, express your emotions, be true to yourself in every situation, and overcome your fears of losing love or being judged or rejected.
And the point is, this isn't a religious way of looking at things. This
Absolutely
is just
not.
a very practical, in a way, human way of looking at things.
Exactly, because we all suffer, like they say, the cliche, we all bleed. We're all looking for love, and we think we have to get it from other people and please them and hurt ourselves to get it, but there's a way of loving yourself where you don't have to do that, and you can still have really nice relationships.
Well, it's an honesty, in a way, isn't it, about yourself?
Yeah,
Feel?
exactly, without ulterior motives, or I'll give you this and then I want something in return,
Yeah.
like most of us call love. I'll please you and hurt myself, but I expect you to betray yourself
Yes.
and please me, and we'll get married and have kids, right? And that's as human beings, we're all learning about love, you know. And
So I remember going to a wedding of a young couple I know very well, and in the wedding ceremony, the minister who was taking doing the nuptial, is that, yes, taking the service, doing the nuptial, whatever.
I think that's what it's called.
He said, and I've never forgotten it, that his advice to a young couple was never to always think what you could do for the other person, because if you lived that way, you would never really fall out of love, because you would always be trying to please. But having said that, are you losing yourself in trying to please somebody else at the same time?
I think most people do, which is why the divorce rate is so high, but there is a balance. If you can learn to take care of yourself in a healthy way and be true to yourself and be honest without fearing the other person's reaction, then you can do what you need to do and give from a place of fullness instead of out of fear and manipulation.
Do you think we're taught to be dishonest as children? Do you
Yes,
think,
I do actually.
is it in the, well, you've got boys.
I do. 3 beautiful boys.
Yeah, well,
4 with the husband, I suppose.
But do parents unconsciously basically teach children to be dishonest for fear of, it used to be in my day, being smacked, even though it was just a little
Absolutely.
whatever. How did you discipline your boys?
The naughty corner, or go to your room and think about it and then come out and you can apologise, that sort of thing.
Did it work?
No, actually, I have to tell you a funny story, because my mother always, but there were 6 of us children, and she had the wooden spoon trick. So, you know, she'd just say, this is what you're going to get. She never hit us, but it was the threat. And I did that to my son. My eldest boy was probably only 4 years old, 3 or 4, and this is wooden spoon, darling, and I whacked it on the kitchen bench to say, this is how it's going to feel on your bottom, and it just broke into pieces. We both just laughed and laughed. It didn't work. So no, that went by the wayside. So it was, basically the naughty con. Just think about what you've done and then come out and
I was sort of brought up, I guess, that I didn't want to upset Mum, so you tried extra hard and probably dishonestly, now I think about it, you'd say, no, I didn't do that, when you did.
Right.
Because you didn't want to upset her.
And then that's a pattern that we tend to carry through all of our relationships, because we think that to get love, we can't be honest.
Yeah.
Or all
it's
of
not just a
ourselves.
baby boomer thing then.
No,
Do you
it's
think
everybody.
It's everybody.
Yeah, often we get in trouble as kids if we tell the truth and someone doesn't want to hear it.
Yes.
Or there's no space for it because everybody's stressed or too busy. And then if we lie, we get in trouble. So it's almost like you feel from a young age, damned if you do and damned if you
Yes,
don't.
exactly. That's true, actually.
So Blake, you do the seminars and you do your counselling. When is and where is your next seminar?
That is a good question. I have a retreat in Byron Bay
Yes.
The last weekend of March.
Okay.
And that's a very nice, deep weekend.
And a beautiful place to be.
And a chance to talk things through. Is it come with your honest face on, or is it
Yes, we bring
learn
down
to be honest?
We bring down the masks and create a safe space for people to be vulnerable and heal whatever they've been holding on to for years.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. Blake, it's great to see you again, and I hope we can keep seeing you as time goes on. It's like a refresher course, really.
Absolutely, and the lessons never change. You know, I think this is our biggest challenge and lesson in life, to take care of ourselves.
So the lesson is, to everyone at home, love yourself.
Absolutely.
And be honest,
Love
I
yourself.
suppose. Be honest about your feelings with those that you deal with. And my feelings are, unfortunately, our time has come to an end.
Yes.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blake.
Yeah. Great to see Blake again.
Yeah, it's just
He's
such
so
a
positive.
but a gentle soul, doesn't
Very
he?
much.
Just comes across as being such a nice man.
He really is a nice man.
He is a nice man.
And so are you nice to be watching our time
yes.
once again?
Remember to love yourselves too.
Well, yes, but that's not in a gooey way. That's a
No,
nice way. That's
no.
not a Dame Edna way.
Okay.
To probably put a finer point on it,
Okay.
just to respect who you are and what you can do. What are you good at, Janice?
Oh, Malcolm, where do I start?
Well, now's good.
Don't. You always put me in these positions.
You've been a great mum. You're a wonderful
thank you.
wife.
See, but you can't say that about
Fantastic
yourself.
singer.
Oh, okay, keep it up. Now you've started.
Lovely home. Fabulous cook.
Oh, yes.
I'm trying to get a dinner date. That's about it.
Okay.
And a fabulous natural redhead.
Oh, thanks. Yes,
And you
people.
have been all the years I've known you.
I have as long as I've known myself.
You know, that's a funny line, because our dear friend Phil Skinner, who we've had on the program, who's on this year, she has always said, I was born a redhead and I'll die a redhead. And I think that's part of loving yourself. It's looking after yourself physically as well, that you feel comfortable when you go out or meet people or do whatever you need to do. So it's probably an extension of Blake's.
So forget this thing called growing old gracefully.
No, who wants to do that? No. Get out and live your life and enjoy yourself. And speaking of enjoying yourself, check us out on Facebook if you can, and we'll see you on our next program.
We will.
So just remember to keep yourself nice till then.
Take care. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
So what else are you good at? I think there must be something.
I don't know. Lots of things, man.